depending on what you all want. I haven't done it in a few years. It's a short one. But yes, I have some very cynical ideas about this particular Paschal. Imagine me being cynical. Very, very questioning ideas. So please, and you're welcome from Toronto. Yes.
So cynicism, is that a pitfall of being a lawyer?
No, I think cynicism is a pitfall of being a human. Okay. The advantage to being a lawyer, I believe, is that I can disagree without being disagreeable, because I disagree for a living. But I don't think you have to be disagreeable when you do it. But it'll be fun. And what I have a whole case of the various pashas because, as most of you know, I used to do River Garden. Their Saturday morning services, I help out. I'm a captain, in, one of four captains. We take turns assisting doing the River Garden Shabbat services. I haven't been back there since March. I can't go there yet, but so every time I do a summary of the Parsha, I do a summary of the Haftorah, I chant the Haftorah, and I do a sermonette, nothing longer than 7 minutes ever. And so, and then I keep them. So when I found out this is Bo, I went to the trunk of my car, which is my office, and I found my bow. And so as this was going on during Torah study, I practiced the Haftorah a couple of times, but I'm going to leave it up to you all if you want the Haftorah. It's not too long, but I've only practiced it twice, but happy to do it. Mary Ellen, are you going to be sticking around, or are you going to give me host privileges, which I don't know what to do with host privileges, but I don't want to make you stay if you don't want to stay. Don't feel badly either, because I wouldn't sit through me.
She's muted.
I'm taking this live right now. If you need me to stay with you or would feel more comfortable if I stayed with you, I'm happy to do it, Ed.
I would like for just the first few minutes to let people in.
Okay.
If there's anybody's coming in, because what I'm going to do during the services, most of you know, what we normally do is I'm going to ask for volunteers for certain readings. And so you can just unmute yourself. It's my intention to do a little bit more English today. We do a lot of Hebrew on Saturday mornings. I have heard the complaints, down talking as chair of the ritual, that sometimes we do too much Hebrew. So, for instance, we're going to do the Nisan Bechol Yom, the daily miracles. We're going to do that in English today, and I'm going to need a reader or two to do those, just because it's sometimes important to know what it is that we're saying in Hebrew. The Hebrew makes very nice chanting, but it doesn't necessarily give us a lot of the meaning. So I'm going to do a little bit of English today.
And you're in charge.
And I need your help. No, I'm going to ask for volunteers, and you just unmute, and then we can do volunteers. Luckily, my dining room table is just full of my various lists I have. This is my list for the Saturday morning service. I have my list for something else. I have my Friday night winter service. I have my Friday night summer service because of two little words that are different. We have the Misha Berach list and the Yortzeit list, and hopefully I'll get to anything. Let's wait. Really the whole two opposing ideas. I'm reading Brad's idea here. At the same time, and still retain the ability to function.
Ed, I wasn't here. Is Cantor not well?
Cantor, there's a cold going around her family. I think she said last night that one of the kids had like a croup.
Blake had the croup.
She called me an hour before services, and I was like, please don't ask me to do Friday night services.
Yeah.
And luckily she got through, but she didn't think if she gave it her all that she would be able. And if you notice at the end of service last night, she couldn't talk.
Yes, I know.
So I got an email this morning, and I knew I was in trouble because with the email with the Misha Berach and Kaddish list, so I knew that she wouldn't be here. And then the question became, I thought I would do the service. I thought she would do the Torah service, but no, we don't have that. So with you all's permission, I'm not doing the Torah service this morning. I'm going to talk about the Parsha. I'll give you a little summary of the Haftorah. If you all want me to chant the Haftorah, I'm happy to try and get through it. But then I'm going to give you my sermonette because I definitely have some opinions.
That's fine.
Because God really pisses me off in this chapter. And, I want you, which he tends to do throughout the Bible. So I'll give you the background as to why I have some objections with God.
Okay.
Yes, you won't hear clergy ever do that, but for me, it's food for thought for you. It's something that spoke to me and speaks to me about this Parsha, and I'm not giving it to you now, but yes, it won't be controversial. I'll just give you my opinion. Okay, and as my judges will say when I give my opinion to my judge, he'll just say noted, and then move on. So, we'll do what we can do. We got about 5 minutes or 4 minutes to go. I'm a little concerned. I'm going to have to try and reach out to Anthony. We haven't seen Anthony in a few weeks.
Hope he's okay.
Yeah. Marsha, I know Marsha and Bob normally go to Rabbi Cohen's Torah study at 11 o'clock.
Oh.
That's why we haven't seen Marsha sometimes. But a few people, well, you can get burned out by some of this, I guess. I personally love Zoom. I love seeing people's reactions. Instead of looking at the back of heads, and mine, could cause a glare in someone's eyes if the sun is just right. That's why I wear a kippah to protect that from happening. I love watching people's reactions. The bar mitzvah that occurred last week, was it? Yes. I think we ought to do all bar mitzvahs by Zoom, just because you see, especially the families, what we're missing. We are a family, but what we're missing is that feeling of being together. And on Zoom, we get to look at each other. I love it when Cantor chants and sings, and people are just swaying back and forth because we truly enjoy it. But we don't get to see that when you're in a sanctuary. You don't. Sometimes it's hard to get into it because the person next to you hasn't seen you in a few months, and so they just want to talk to you through the service, and you just want to do the service.
I'm with you, Ed. I love Zoom. I'm hoping between the end of this pandemic and the beginning of the next one that we'll retain Zoom.
And I don't know if no one's complaining about any background noise, but I have a really lousy computer. I just need a few more 1,000 points on my Visa card in order to get a free, really good computer, because I don't feel like paying for one. I just need a few more points to get a new one. But I do Zoom depositions. I do Zoom hearings. So I'll go to work wearing a bow tie and a jacket and all dressed up in jeans.
Well, at least you're wearing pants.
We don't know that.
We don't. It's true.
No,
At least we get to see Charlie in Toronto. It would be hard not to.
First of all, my family is here, and I wouldn't do that anyway. There's a certain respect.
Yes.
Like I wouldn't consider wearing a collarless shirt at a service. There's a certain respect that I have for what we do, and yeah. But people, I have seen things that I wish could be unseen. I've I've seen more cat butts at a hearing. They just think the keyboard is theirs.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They're going to
I'm-
come out or not, but I heard that we may have Zoom and in person in the future, not just one or the other. To me, that would be ideal.
Yeah, I think we have to do that, and we are talking about it. So
I think
the,
that would be
you know,
great.
we're already set up to live stream all services. That would not be Zoomed. The services would be a live stream, but definitely we can consider setting up a Zoom room. So our friends at River Garden who can only connect virtually could still continue to attend Wisdom and Torah study.
Right. Yes.
And then the people that want to come into the building or can come into the building will be in the room, and they'll be able to see the people in the room. And then the people in the room will be able to see the people on the Zoom screen. So
That would be great.
Zoom rooms are really trending now that people have gotten used to Zoom and they realize how convenient it is. Businesses don't have to pay for people to fly across the country to meet in person. It's much more convenient now. They've gotten used to it.
Right.
So, but
True.
I think it would really be a great thing for the synagogue to take that on, because we have to meet everybody where they are. And we do have some people who are just not mobile enough to get to the places they would want to go to, but their minds still need to be stimulated and they still need the community. And I think this provides that in a way that is beneficial to those people.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, for the high holidays, when we live stream stuff, I mean, we opened it up to the world. I mean, for me, oh, okay, you let Chuck in. For me, I would put it on a donations page next year. Every little bit helps. But I've certainly got comments from the high holidays from people from around the world, really.
Right.
Not just Canada. I'm
Well,
surprised. Charlie
and then
gets-
you look at Charlie, who grew up in this synagogue, and he's worshiping in it again.
and writing
you know.
letters to the editor.
Right.
Yes. Yay, Charlie.
Okay, so we're a little bit, we're 2 minutes in. I'm going to mute everybody and let Ed take over. Ed, if you would unmute yourself before you begin speaking.
Okay, I'm back. And so you all have to put up with my New York accent. So let's get through this, and we do things better when we do it together. And so it's nice to see everybody virtually today. Let's turn to page 74. That's 192 in the blue, not the blue, and whatever the other book is. What's the blue part? I'm colorblind, so I have a hard time between those two. So it's 74 and 192. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. And we turn to page 79, page 197. And if there's someone who would like to read Matter is Never Destroyed. Okay, Marilyn, yeah, unmute yourself, please.
Okay. Matter is never destroyed, only transformed. So too can the soul evolve higher and higher, from instinct to inspiration, haughtiness to holiness, selfishness to service, from individualism to union, to join with the soul of souls, the infinite one. As the soul is magnified and sanctified, so is the infinite one exalted. Baruch atah Adonai asher biyado nefesh kol hai v'ruach kol b'sar ish.
Thank you. As we turn to page 80, 198, can I have one other person to read every other line with me? We're going to do this in English. So is there anybody else who'd like to do it? No takers. Okay, I'll do it. I'm going to do it in English. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night. Amen. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who opens the eyes of the blind. Amen. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who frees the captive. Amen. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who lifts up the fallen. Amen and amen on that one. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who stretches the earth over the waters. Amen. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who strengthens our steps. Amen. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who clothes the naked. Amen. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who gives strength to the weary. Amen. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who removes sleep from the eyes and slumber from the eyelids. Amen. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who made me in the image of God. Amen. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has made me free. Amen. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has made me a Jew. Amen. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who girds Israel with strength. Amen. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who crowns Israel with splendor. Amen. And praise to blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with the mitzvot, commanding us to engage with words of Torah. You know, when we do this prayer every week, two things come to mind. One, my New Yorkers come to mind because I grew up saying the word Adonai. And it wasn't until I came here to Jacksonville that I now say Adonai. And I just remember that every week when we do the blessings.
That's Sephardic. That's Sephardic.
I have no idea. I just knew I grew up with Adonai because I talked and I walked. That's what we did in New York. Down here, I talk, I walk, I drink coffee, not coffee, and I say Adonai. The second thing that I noticed in many of these prayers, it's not a prayer of thanking God for just doing these things, but for God allowing us to help him to make these things happen. To clothe the naked, God doesn't do that. God works through us to help clothe the naked. He gives us our responsibilities on a lot of this to take care of ourselves. And that's why I love these prayers. Okay. Page 88, which is page 206. In the middle, is there anyone who would like to read? These are things that are limitless. Barbara? Nope, you moved on me, Barbara. There you are on top. You want to unmute?
These are things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world. While the principle remains in the world to come, they are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study, morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all.
Amen. We turn now to page 100, and I'm going to use a different tune than Cantor always uses. I've done this prayer with you all before. One I kind of grew up with. And it begins with the chorus line is actually the last line and a half. Kol anishama tehaleluya, hallelujah. Kol anishama tehaleluya, hallelujah. Hallelu el bikacho, hallelu brikia uzo, hallelu bigvuratav, hallelu berov gedulo. Kol anishama tehaleluya, hallelujah. Kol anishama tehaleluya, hallelujah. Hallelu b'tei kashafar. Hallelu b'nevel b'chinur. Hallelu b'tochu macho. Hallelu b'minim be'ugav. Kol hanishama tehaleluya. Hallelujah. Kol hanishama tehaleluya. Hallelujah. Hallelu b'tziltzalei shama. Hallelu b'tziltzalei Torah. Kol hanishama tehaleluya. Hallelujah. Kol hanishama tehaleluya. Hallelujah. Kol hanishama tehaleluya. Hallelujah. Okay. I've added in, and Cantor allows me to do this every once in a while, but if someone would like to do on page 107, 225, what makes a fire burn, to me, this is my probably my most favorite prayer in the, or reading in the entire book. It means so much to me. Is there anybody who would like to do it? Sheila, just unmute yourself. Are you saying yes, or are you just reaching out to say hello? Okay, just unmute yourself, Sheila.
I hope
Okay.
you don't hear my son vacuuming in the background here.
When he's done, he can come here.
Yeah, I'll think I'll hire him out. He's very good cleaner and cook. Okay. What makes a fire burn is space between the logs, a breathing space. Too much of a good thing, too many logs packed in too tight can douse the flames almost as surely as a pail of water would. So building fires requires attention to the spaces in between as much as to the wood. When we are able to build open spaces in the same way we have learned to pile on the logs, then we can come to see how it is fuel and absence of fuel together that make the fire possible. We only need to lay a log lightly from time to time. A fire grows simply because the space is there, with openings in which the flame that knows just how it wants to burn can find its way. Rise and open the door that is shut.
So we can rise in person or in spirit, as they say on page 108, 226. The call to worship. Baruch hu et Adonai hamivarach. Baruch Adonai hamivarach le'olam. Turning over to now 110, 230, 228. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Yotzeo b'dei choshech, Oseh shalom hakol. Yotzeo b'dei choshech, Oseh shalom uvarei et hakol. In the bottom now of page 112. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah. Focus our minds on your mitzvot. Unite our hearts in love and reverence for your name. Then we will never feel shame, never deserve rebuke, and never stumble. Having trusted in your great and awesome holiness, we shall celebrate your salvation with joy. Gather us in peace from the four corners of the earth and lead us upright to our land. For you, O God, work wonders. You chose us. Truly, you drew us near to your great name, that we may acknowledge you, declaring you one in love. Praise be you, Adonai, who chooses your people Israel in love. Baruch HaTorah Adonai, Abocher b'Amo Yisrael, V'yahava, page 114 to 32. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch, Shem Kavod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Please be seated. And this is another one I think I want to read in English today instead of the Hebrew, because sometimes we miss what it is that it's trying to tell us. So I'll read, but please read it as well on page 116 to 34. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai, your God, Adonai Elohechem, Emet. Now, page 121. Can I have two readers for the eternal truth? Yes, no? Okay, Linda? And yes, Barbara? Is that your hand? Okay. Okay, Linda, you want to start that off?
Sure. The eternal truth is that you alone are God and there is none else.
May the righteous of all nations rejoice in your love and exalt in your justice.
Let them beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks.
Let nation not lift up sword against nation, nor learn war anymore.
You shall not hate your brother or your sister in your heart.
The stranger that sojourns with you shall be accepted as your equal, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt.
Why do you crush my people and oppress the poor? Asked God.
We know that the Eternal One defends the poor and upholds the rights of the needy.
Praise to God Most High.
Blessed is God and deserving of blessing.
Amen. Page 122, that's 240. Micha mocha ba'elim Adonai, micha mocha ne'eda b'kodesh, nora tehilo tohosei pele, nora tehilo tosei pele. Shira chadusha shirchu gedulim, v'shimcha al safar hayom, yachad kulam hodu, v'himchu v'yameru. Adonai Yimlo Le'olam Va'ed. Adonai Yimlo Le'olam Va'ed. Shur Yisroel Kumavi Ezrat Yisroel Uvdechu Melcha Yehuda V'Yisroel. Go aleinu Adonai Tzavaot Shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Ba'al Yisrael. If you haven't already been standing or standing in mind and body, we start out Tefillah on page 124, that's 242. Adonai sifatati tahu fi yagitehi latecha Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. 126. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor V'Anewah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chazdei Avot, V'Ima'ot, Maybe go Ali Bneblehem, Lamon Shemo V'Yahava, Melech Ozer Mashiach Umagin, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magin Avraham V'Yizvat Sarah, Atah Boli Olam Adonai, Michaye HaKol Atah Rav Liyoshia, Mashiv HaRuach, Omari Hada Hashem, Mechalchel Chayim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Nochlim Verofech Olim, Umatir Asurim, Umekaye Memulato, Vishenei Yafah, Michamocha Ba'al Yeruot, Umidol Mehelach, Melech Mimit Mechayeh, Umatmiach Yeshua, Benemanat Halakayohu Takol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol. Turn the page. Nekadesh Shemcha Ba'olam, Geshem Shemati Sima Hoto B'Shmei Marom, Kakatu Ayad Niviecha, B'Kara Ze'el Zehedei Amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzivahot, Meloch Ol Haaretz Kivodo. Adir Adoreinu Adonai Adonenu Madir Shimcha B'chol Haaretz, Baruch Kivod Adonai Mimkomo. Echadu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu Hu Yashmienu, Berachamav Le'enei Kol Chai. Ahani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai Le'olam, Elohai Yitzion, Lidor Vador, Hallelujah. Lidor Vador Nagid Gahad Lecha, Ulenetzach Netzachim Kedushatcha Na'akdish, V'shivkacho Eloheinu Mipilu Lo Yamush, Le'olam Va'ed, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Please be seated. Page 132 to 50. Yismichu b'malachutecha, shomerei, 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 Shabbat b'korei, anehek Shabbat. Yismichu b'malachutecha, shomerei, 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 Shabbat b'korei, anehek Shabbat. Mikadeshei, Mikadeshei Shevi Shabbat, Kulam Yismehu, V'yitagu B'tuvecha Shabbat, Yismechu B'malachutecha, Shomerei, 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 Shabbat B'korei, Oneg Shabbat, Yismechu B'malachutecha, Shomerei, 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 Shabbat b'chorei, Ogei Shabbat. Nahashvi, Natsita bo, V'kidash Shabbat. Chehemda ham yahamim, Oh Tokerata Shabbat. Yismechu, Emalachutecha. Shomerei, shomerei, shomerei Shabbat v'kodei oneg Shabbat. Yismichu b'malachutecha. Shomerei, shomerei, shomerei Shabbat. V'kodei oneg Shabbat. Zechem l'maaseh, l'maaseh bereishit Shabbat. Zechem l'maaseh, l'maaseh bereishit Shabbat. Yismichu b'malachutecha. Shomerei, shomerei, shomerei Shabbat v'kodei oneg Shabbat. Yismichu b'malachutecha. Shomerei, shomerei, shomerei Shabbat v'kodei oneg Shabbat. I'll turn to page 135, 253. Considering the week we've had this week, the second reading, who would like to do the second reading? Where has this week vanished? Sheila, okay.
Okay. My son stopped vacuuming. It got quiet. Where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished? Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of the burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat abide. Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time, contain the retreat of the hours and days from the grasp of frantic life. Let me learn to pause, if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day. Let me enter into a quiet world this day. On this day, Shabbat abide. Baruch atah Adonai Makadesh Shabbat.
Amen.
Amen.
I love that one. Thank you. On page 137, you can see also on page 136, there were two it says, but the say that we do is on page 137, which is 255. No, I am not doing the Cantor's version of the Ritzay that we hear at the high holidays. I wish I had that type of voice. I certainly wouldn't be a lawyer if I did. So on 137, we'll do it the way we can do it together. Ritzay Adonai Eloheinu B'Yamcha Yisrael. Ritzay Adonai Eloheinu B'Yamcha Yisrael. Utefilatam Utefilatam Yahavatikabel. Utefilatam Utefilatam Yahavatikabel. Ritzay Adonai Eloheinu B'Yamcha Yisrael. Utehi l'ratzon tomid avodat Yisrael amecha. Utehi l'ratzon tomid avodat Yisrael amecha. Ritzay Adonai Eloheinu B'Yamcha Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai sheholtecha levadecha v'yiranavod. On page 138, 256, I always have a problem when we do Modim Anachnu Lach. Growing up in a conservative world, it is one paragraph, and the tradition is when we say Modim Anachnu Lach, you bend forward at the waist, and it actually says so on the bottom of the page 139. But it's a long prayer. So what I would like to do is to read for you in the middle of page 138, 256, what this prayer actually means. We acknowledge with thanks that you are Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors forever. You are the rock of our lives and the shield of our salvation in every generation. Let us thank you and praise you for our lives, which is in your hands, for our souls, which are in your care, for your miracles that we experience every day, and for your wondrous deeds and favors at every time of day, evening, morn, and noon. O good one whose mercies never end, O compassionate one whose kindness never fails, we forever put our hope in you. Amen. Page 140, 258. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Chen v'chesed, chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Chen v'chesed, chen v'chesed v'rachamim. V'rachamim. Sim shalom. Tova uvracha. Sim shalom. Tova uvracha. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amecha. Sim shalom. Tova uvracha. Sim shalom. Tova uvracha. Before we go into personal prayers and personal moment, which is my favorite part of this service, because this is your opportunity to have your own thoughts and have your own conversation with God. What brings us into that is on page 143, 261. I just love this prayer. Holy One, give me a quiet heart and help me to hear the still small voice that speaks within me. It calls me to come close to you and to grow in your likeness. It reaches me to do my work faithfully, even when no one's eyes is upon me. It counsels me to judge others kindly and to love them freely, for it persuades me to see divinity in everyone I meet. Help me, O God, to come to the end of each day feeling that I used its gifts wisely and faced its trials bravely. Now, please, this is a moment for you now to have a conversation with God or whatever your thoughts are. And when you're done, if you look up at the camera so I know that you're done, I don't want to interrupt anyone. Say shalom b'mamav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oh, say shalom b'mamav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, V'imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael. 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 V'imru, amen. Now at this point, we normally will do a Torah service. We're not going to do the Torah service, but I'll talk to you about the Pascha, and I will tell you what the Haftorah. I'll give you a summary of that as well, and we'll take it from there. But since I never left the table after Torah study till services started, I completely forgot to put on my talit this morning, but I realize that makes me no less into prayer than I am now. I didn't bring any wine to the table or any bread, so if somebody wants to take the opportunity to have it, if you have some wine and some bread later on when we do the hamotzi and the blessing over the wine, that would be really helpful to me because I don't have it with me. So this is Parsha Bo, and you all were there for Torah study. Here's my summary of it, of the Parsha. So we know we had the 7 plagues already take place, and Pharaoh refused to let the Israelites go. God hardened his heart to demonstrate to Pharaoh and to all of Egypt the consequences of the continued enslavement of the Jewish people as a lesson to mankind for all times. Moses went to Pharaoh and warned that if he didn't relent, the entire community would be overrun by locusts, destroying everything that managed to survive the plague of hail. And despite Pharaoh's servants pleading with him to permit the slaves to leave for the 3 days, Pharaoh tried to bargain with Moses to permit only some of the Jews to leave. But Moses was firm in his demand. This infuriated Pharaoh, who wanted the young to remain behind in Egypt. And after being thrown out from Pharaoh's presence, great swarms of locusts swept over the land. Pharaoh then pleaded with Moses to ask God to halt the plague. And the 8th plague ended, but the Jews still were not free. Next, there was darkness over the land for 3 days, except for the children of Israel. They had light in their dwellings. Pharaoh was ready to let all the Jews leave, but then leave their flocks and herds, and Moses made no concessions. Pharaoh refused. Then there was the slaying of the Egyptians' firstborn and the firstborn of the cattle. We don't always talk about the cattle. During this month, Nisan, which this was to be the first month of the calendar, and God commanded that on the 10th day of that month, a lamb would be sacrificed as the Paschal Lamb, the Pesach, and to sprinkle blood on the doorposts of their homes and to have the annual feasts. The Jews were then freed after the 10th plague. Parents were instructed to tell their children for all time about these events, which is why we have the Seder. So in this Parsha, the tone changes from narrative to legislation as the Israelites are given commands from marking the Pesach and recalling it in all future generations. Now, I find it interesting that God tells Moses to tell the people to borrow the Egyptian objects of silver and gold. God basically commands Moses to lie, deceive, borrow the jewelry. This later comes in the desert because they're going to need all of that stuff, not only for the golden calf, but to survive. Now the calendar, why is it now changed from the month of the Exodus being the first month, the first mitzvah? This was important as one of the first steps in the liberation is for the Israelites to have their own calendar, recalling the most important days in their history. This is the first month of redemption of the Jews. But Tishrei, where we celebrate Rosh Hashanah, is also the first month. This commemorates the birth of the world. And so while it appears that there's a conflict here, The rabbis give two answers to resolve the apparent controversy. The Israelites are finally given their freedom, 600,000 men plus their families, flocks, and herds. And don't forget that unleavened bread. The Israelites were in Egypt 430 years. Then there is a description of the Seder and how it must be told to all generations. There's also the discussion of the consecration of the firstborn to God. Finally, there is the requirement of the tefillin, that with a mighty hand, the Lord freed us from Egypt. So that's a summary of Bo. The Haftorah from Bo comes from Jeremiah, who was a spiritual leader in Jerusalem and prophesied that during the last days of the Jewish state. And many of his countrymen wanted to form an alliance with Egypt, hoping to gain enough strength to overthrow the Babylonians and restore the kingdom. Jeremiah condemns this, since Egypt was the same country that oppressed the Jewish people. So he prophesies that Egypt will also be overrun by the people of the north, the Babylonians. He prophesies that Israel's salvation will come from God if they follow him correctly, not from any alliances. So now that's the non-opinionated discussion about the Pasha and the Haftorah. And I'm going to spare you the 7 to 10 minute chanting of the Haftorah unless you all want it. I don't see the need for it because I think that the sermonette works really nicely. Is there anybody, just wave to me if you want me to do the Haftorah. No? Good. Okay. So here's my sermonette of all of this. So if you actually pay any attention to my previous sermonettes, I would say most of the time I'm a little cynical regarding some of the players of the week, especially in Genesis. Some would say maybe I go overboard, especially when it comes to Esau, because he's so mistreated. But anyway, I think I need to continue this theme of mine. In this week's Parsha, what we have is we really entered into the meat of our expected deliverance. So we could begin the journey to turn a bunch of slaves who had no idea what it was to be God's chosen people, or for that matter, no idea of their background, with our forefathers, to a free people who have to learn, as a baby does from birth, here is a nation, to being a strong, free people, independent, and followers of one God people. This is a story everyone knows and marvels at. But what I have a really hard time is, well, most of the story of the argument between Moses, God, and Pharaoh. I'm going to let Moses off the hook here. He's a guy out tending sheep. God appears and gives him his new life's mission. Not much choice for him to do but God's bidding. Remember, God hasn't appeared and talked to anyone for almost 400 years. The last time he spoke to Jacob. He doesn't talk to anyone else until Moses. We have no knowledge that the Israelites even knew of the God of our forefathers and foremothers. God now makes his appearance with Moses, and up to now we have God in partnership with our forefathers and guiding them with promises to make their descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and the grains of sand. Now we are introduced to a different God. This God suddenly remembers his people who are enslaved and will lead the way towards redeeming his people. It's how it's done that I find a little disturbing. My real difficulty is God's actions. I want a loving, caring God, one slow to anger and forgiveness. We don't exactly see that God here. First, we have God telling Moses to lie to Pharaoh about just letting the Israelites go for a few days to celebrate God in the desert, as if we'll all come back in 3 days. Let's call this fake news. I don't even want to get into the borrowing of the Egyptians' gold and jewelry, but I guess you can liken that as to borrowing a tissue from somebody. My main concerns here are the terrible events which occur, the plagues. Each and every one is meant to make the Egyptians suffer, but not only the people, but the animals and the land. The killing is tremendous, and that's not just the 10th plague. It's the suffering and the death all along. Now, I can understand the argument that should the people have been let go and free, that might mistakenly be seen as an act of magnanimity on the Pharaoh's part. They must be freed in such a way that not only the Egyptians, but all nations will understand that it was God's doing, not Pharaoh's goodwill. I like that explanation. God ratcheting it up so not only the Egyptians, all nations of the earth, though, will know the power of God, and the delivery of the Israelites were due to God's awesome power and the generosity of the Pharaoh, and not the generosity of the Pharaoh. And I can go with that. Still, it's not how I visualize my God. The God I seek to partner with, for me to lead my life with aspirations to be the very best I can be, as we are told. So I have a problem with how God is presented in this story of freeing the nation. There's no argument about how he takes care and protects the Israelites after they are released. That's the God I'm proud of serving. I'm looking at this from a very small period of time, the freeing of the people with such viciousness. I'm also bothered by the fact that God foretold Abraham in Lech Lecha that we would be enslaved over 400 years and would be released. And then here in last week's Parsha, God suddenly remembers us. So I question, really, was the violence, the murder, the total destruction, attributes of a loving God really necessary? And if the answer is yes, to show the world the power and the might of our God, that others would fear our God, and is that what we want? One of the most famous midrashim of this epic story was that when the waters of the sea came together, drowning the Egyptian army, and the Israelites were dancing and celebrating, God was upset with this because the Egyptians were his children too. Well, then how can their deaths be celebrated? And this midrash has survived millennia. How can this be reconciled with God's actions with the plagues? And was 10 plagues necessary? Couldn't 4 do it? In the first 3, the Pharaoh's magicians could mimic it, but 5, 6, and 7? With each plague, the suffering became worse. Couldn't God have proven his point with less than 10 plagues? And the deaths of the firstborn? I don't know, and no one does. But I still question it. Again, maybe it was all necessary to show everyone, the Israelites included, that this was an extremely powerful God, more than any other gods, and everyone needs to look out. So maybe that's a little controversial. Maybe here it's very intentional. I've done this because I think it's important to consider this story a little differently than the Cecil B. DeMille's glorification of the story. Critical thinking is always important to me, and by doing so causes me to consider my understandings. My purpose today wasn't to try and convince you of how you should see the story, but it was to try to convince you to question, break the stories down, seek your own answers. For me, it's the journey I see of God's actions before this story, the change as the Exodus is occurring, and God's actions after we leave Egypt. And that's quite a transformation. But still, necessary violence and destruction, well, I haven't quite worked that part out yet. But maybe you have. Shabbat Shalom. So that's my unbridled opinion on this particular chapter. And hopefully gave you some pause. At this point, we would normally, and we're going to, pray for people's health and the health of those who take care of our people. Misha Berach, I do have Cantor did send me the Misha Berach list this morning, and if you have people that that you would like me to mention that aren't on the list, please place that in the chat, and I will get to it. Actually, we don't need to do that. Do not put it in the chat. Just unmute yourself. There's only a few of us here. Just unmute yourself and give me a name. And the Misha Berach is found on page 253. So let me go over the list. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill and their caretakers. And I have Carol Babcock, Malcolm Bloom, Philip Bloom, Rosalie Teddy Bono, Dr. David Cassius, Peggy Sharon Clark, Stuart Cohen, Arnold Kaur, Tom Davis, Devorah Bat Rachel, the Elkin family in Southern California, Art Fields, Bob Flynn, David Hampton, Margaret Hare, Mary Hartman, Margie Jacobs, Judy and Ben Jacobson, Kimberly Janis, Robert Kay, Marilyn Levitt, Teresa Levy, Roseanne Macon, Barbara McDonald, Gary Nadler, David Osofsky, Laura Osofsky, Marilyn Pankin, James Penson, Tom Pinnis, Buddy Pollock, Jean Posen, Randall Rout, Marlene Rev, Sandra Resnikoff, Ida Richin, Anita Richin, Alex Rosen, Lori Rothstein, Stephanie Scabilia, Ruthie Silver, Jan Smith, Bob Tews, Bernice Tobias, Ruth Van Alstine, Judy Van Gorder, Joan Waltz, Carolyn Wenk, and Susan Wolf. And if you have anybody else, unmute yourself and tell me. Sheila.
Yeah. Bruce Emanuel, Lori Kurland, Drew Emanuel, Scott Kurland, Jean Seltzer.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. May the Holy One, blessed be He, be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived, as well as take care of the people who take care of them. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit, and let us say Amen. Page 253, please join with me. Mi shebeirach avoteinu v'kol habracha li'imotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. And let us say, Amen. Mi shebeirach imotenu v'kol habracha li'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. And now we turn to page 282 for Aleinu. And as a reminder, if you haven't heard me say this before, please rise in body or in spirit. The Aleinu that we do, if you bother to read it here, because we all know it by memory, it's the second one. This was an attempt by the Reform movement to get us all to learn the first one, but that failed miserably. What we do is the second one. Most people don't recognize that. So it's Aleinu on page 282, and then we switch over to 287 to complete it. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tei tegula l'yotzeh b'reishis, v'la'chatzanu k'rehei avatzon, v'la'hosamanu k'mishmachot adoma, shelo samchelcheinu kahem, v'gahar aleinu k'chol hamona, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, Lifnei melech b'chei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. Page 287, 591. V'nemar v'hoya Adonai l'melech al haaretz, v'yom hahu, yeh Adonai echad. Ushemo echad. Please be seated. And now, before we do a Mourner's Kaddish, which is on page 294, I have the Yortzeit list as well. And again, if the name is not on here, please just unmute yourself and let me know at the end. I'm just looking here to see if anyone's names or the family members are here today, and I don't see anyone. But if there is, certainly memories be a blessing. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, and those who died in this season and in years past, and those who we have drawn into our hearts with our own. We are in a period of Shiva for Dr. Michael Soloway, who was not a colleague, but someone that I knew very well, and sent him a lot of my clients over the last 30 years. Shloshim period for Stanley Jacobs, Rosella Schiff, and Alan Setzer. And we have the yortzites of the following: Arlene Albin, David Anchel, Erwin Analik, Carol Wheel Bartley, Stella Isaac Baer, Samuel Benjamin, Simi Benjamin, Ronald Bloom, Edith Wilson Edwards, Faye Feld, Tilly Garber Field, Samuel Fisher, Gerald Friedman, Ella Fruit, Annie O. Grunthal, Ruth Halperin, Lance Corporal Jeremy Kane, Toby Schwarm K, Elliot Klein, Sadie Klepper, Doris Leslie, Jean Lippman, Leon Joseph Lusser, Seymour Marco, Leon Mason, Richard Miller, Erwin Miller, Harley Mills, Dr. David Mizrahi, Abraham Osasky, Richard Pankin, Benjamin Rifkin, Louise Pfeiffer Ringel, Miriam Richard, Samuel Rosenberg, Marcus Oral Rosen, Ruth Seitlin, Dr. Norman Schiff, Leo Silverfeld, and Albert Stein. And is there anybody else amongst everybody here? No. Okay. We certainly also want to add in all of those people. Gosh, the more than 400,000 people who died from COVID, and everybody else in our hearts, people who have died around the world from COVID as well, and from any other, from acts of violence, or who have just died, period, and have nobody to say Kaddish for them, just like our 6 million. So I ask that we rise as a community, or rise in spirit as a community, for the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalamad v'yivrachi v'tei v'yamlich malkutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beis Yisrael ba'adokolav v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach li'alom li'omei omayav. Yitzbarak v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalol shemei dekudishah v'rechu le'elam mincha v'chata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechamata da'miran v'yalamar v'yimru amen. Yehei shlomo Rabbo mim shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yalko Yisrael v'yimru amen. Osei shalom b'mamav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'yalko Yisrael v'yimru amen. And may their memories be for a blessing. Please be seated. Before we do the blessings over the wine, etc., a couple of announcements. Take a look at your the Temple Times and the website. Lots of events. Tonight they're watching the Woody Allen movie Crimes and Misdemeanors with the rabbi, and there's discussions about it. There's lots going on. There's no football game on tonight. Both of them are on tomorrow, so you're not in interference. But there is something that the Sisterhood is doing tomorrow night, and I don't have it in front of me. And that's competing against the football games, but that all depends on what you like or not. There's always something going on, but the most important thing is we do things better when we do them together. And it was my honor, it was my pleasure to be with you all this morning. And hopefully I've lived up to the challenge that Canty gave me to at the last minute to take care of this service this morning. So did someone get wine and challah? Linda, good for you. Do you have wine too, Linda? No, does somebody else have wine?
Barbara does.
Barbara has wine. Good. We're covered. So before we do a Donald Olam, let's do the blessings over the wine. And Barbara has challah too. That's fine. So we're gonna do the wine first, and Ron's got the wine. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pari hagafen amen. Gotta drink the wine, Ryan. Drink it all once, just down it. Makes the day go so much easier. Okay. Unless you have diabetes and it's Manischewitz, in which case you go into a diabetic coma. Okay, now for the blessing over the challah. Thank you for bringing the column. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Okay, thank you. And so what we do is we'll finish the service with the Don Olam on page 321, and with a choice of about 400 different melodies. I want to do my favorite melody. It turns out to be one of Canta's favorite melodies, but she never does it. She just tells me that it's one of her favorite melodies. So that's on page 321. Adon Olam Hashem Alach B'terem Cho Yitzi Nira V'yeit Naso B'chev Zacho Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'yacharei Kiklot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nara Behu haya, behu habe, behu yeh betifara, behu yeh betifara, behu echad, v'yein sheni, leham shelo, lehachbira, v'li reshit, v'li tzachlit, Los v'ham nisra, Los v'ham nisra, Yehu Eli v'chai goali, v'tzur chevli, v'yetzara, Yehu nisi umanosli, v'not kosi v'yom ekra, v'not kosi v'yom ekra, Ya ado aki ruchi v'yetz ishay v'yaira v'im ruchi giviyati Adonai li v'lo ira Adonai li v'lo ira. Shabbat shalom, everybody. You can unmute yourselves and wish everyone a Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Have a good week.
Shalom.
Have a great
Have a
week.
good week. Good, Charlie. Good seeing you again.
Thank you, same.
See you
Very much
tonight,
so.
Charlie.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Have a good week.
Barbara, good week, everybody.
Everybody.
Good, healthy, safe week.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thanks for leading the service, Ed.
Yeah, my
Thanks,
honor.
Ed. That was great.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank
Shabbat
you.
shalom.
See some of y'all tonight.
Charlie, did I live up to my opinion on the sermonette? That was a little different.
Very good.
Yes.
Very good, Ed.
Very good.
Always.
Okay.
Have a good one. Bye,
Okay.
everybody.
Bye.
You
Bye-bye.
well, Mary Ellen,
Good night,
thank you
everybody.
so much
See you later.
for doing
See you
this. It's
tonight,
great.
Charlie.
And she may not even be there anymore. Okay, everyone, I'm going to click off here.